Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and you are watching a very special edition of CityWorks. CityWorks is the show about work and working people. It is a co-production of the School of Labor and Urban Studies at the City University of New York and CUNY TV. This week, we're talking about the experience of the members of the Domestic Workers Alliance. You've heard a lot about care workers. The media have given us, as they should, a good sense of what nurses and emergency workers are going through. But what about those care workers who live in our homes or work in our homes? Where are they sheltering? And who are they caring for in these times? Not to mention, who are caring for the people in their lives? That's what we're going to find out on today's show. Ai-jen Poo is joining us. She is the executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And with her is Crystal Crawford, a member of the Alliance. She's a nanny working, I think, speaking to us from Florida. Is that right, Crystal?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. I'm in upstate New York. Crystal's in Atlanta, Georgia. Where are you, Ai-jen?
Chicago.
You're in Chicago. So let's start with you, Crystal. Tell us a little bit what your day is like.
Having booked clients all month long, all the way through April. And now I have one client booked as far as my nanny position goes. Unfortunately, that means that I am down to just my bare bones, making sure that my bills are being met and just stretching groceries as needed. And right now we're just trying to just get through the moment and make sure that we make it from month to month.
Ai-jen, talk to us about the national picture, because again, I feel like I'm getting a sense of those working in hospitals. I'm not getting a sense of people working in homes. We
represent nannies like Crystal who take care of the children of American families, and they are currently, some of them have lost, they were among the first to lose their work and lose income, and some of them continue to work, and many of them are supporting the emergency room doctors and the public health officials who have childcare needs in order to go to do what they're doing to provide the life-saving services that they're providing in this crisis. We also represent house cleaners who were also among the first to lose their income way before the shelter-in-place orders came down for everyone. We were hearing from house cleaners that they were losing clients from 20% of their income to 80% of their income, really worried about how they were going to put food on the table that week for their families. This was weeks ago. We also represent the home care workers who are essentially the guardians of some of the most vulnerable populations to the virus. Many home care workers support elderly clients, people with chronic illnesses, people with disabilities, and were it not for them coming to bring food, bring medicine and other supplies, those populations would be completely isolated and unsafe on their own. So these are workers who are providing life-saving services, and up until this point, they haven't had any access to protective equipment, no access to testing. Most do not have health care or any other safety net. So we're looking at a population that is really putting their own lives and health and safety on the line to keep the rest of us safe, but they're not being recognized or supported in order to do so, and it's creating a real crisis.
Are domestic workers of the sort you just described categorized in these times as essential workers?
One of the challenges is that there are lots of definitions, right? And what we need to do is have the widest possible definition of essential worker as we can, because basically everyone who's working right now is essential, right? Everyone who's working is keeping this country together in one form or another, including the domestic workers, and they should all have hazard pay. They should all have protective equipment, and they should have testing, treatment, healthcare, and support for the childcare needs that they have. The nannies themselves also have children who are home from school and need care.
Who is looking after those kids in your life, Crystal, if you have them, or in the lives of your co-workers?
That's a great question. So I currently do not have children. However, my nanny friends that do have kids, I have stepped up to help with them as well as needed. And so I don't ask for any pay, but I know that they need to work to keep food on the table. So that's what I've done. In Atlanta, we are working as a unit. I'm sure like most cities and states are, but right now we're just trying to make sure that all of us are taken care of across the board.
Talk about your client, because I know that many of you have a very close relationship with your clients. Talk about the client that you have now. Who is he or she? What are his or her needs?
Right. Awesome. Great question. It's a couple. And the only reason why I go that one day a week is because they both have meetings on the same day. And so unfortunately, they tried to get out of it and move their meetings around. They couldn't, in trying to watch the kids while on those virtual conference calls at the same time for 2 hours at a time, which they just couldn't do it. And so what I do is I go in and make sure that the kids are taken care of, and then they relieve me around lunchtime.
And those kids?
Yes, they're two girls, 3 and 4. So very great kids. It's a very easy gig, and they're glad to see somebody outside of their parents every week.
That all sounds great when there isn't a pandemic, but when there is, are you afraid going in there? Do you have protective gear? We hear about gloves and masks and hand washing. What are you actually doing to protect yourself?
That is awesome. So I told the families that if I'm coming to your house, we all got to practice the same protection. And so we're washing hands. I don't take the kids outside. I said that I'm not taking them to the parks. We're not, going on any walks because I'm putting myself at risk by coming to your house. And so they respect that. And if they didn't, I wouldn't be able to work for them. So I'm very stern. I want to make sure that I'm protecting, myself. And I still, have contact with my parents. I don't want to bring something from a client and bring it to them, because they are a little bit older. So, I am taking a little risk, but I feel like I'm one of the nannies that are, it's just me right now. And so I don't have as big of as a risk as someone that has a family at home.
I have heard this so many times, Jen, interviewing nurses and now hearing from Crystal. I give thanks that I don't have family, so I can do this work. And in a way, it's inspiring. In another way, it's just heartbreaking. What are people doing to protect themselves if no one's looking after them when they do have people at home? Or as Crystal does when she has plenty of people she's also in contact with.
Well, caregivers are also really taking care of each other. As you heard from Crystal, she's supporting her other nanny friends who also need care for their families. And we've heard this from many caregivers. Home care workers in Los Angeles, for example, have set up a food delivery program where oftentimes there are home care workers who've had to quarantine with the clients that they serve away from their own families. And so their other caregiver sisters basically go and check on the kids or bring food and bring groceries and bring supplies. So people are really finding ways of supporting each other and taking care of each other in this moment. But they shouldn't be having to scramble in this way. They should have a lot more resources to be able to do so. And unfortunately, one thing that we're starting to see is as we're getting a sense of who will be covered by some of the federal relief efforts, there are huge segments of our workforce, many of whom are providing life-saving services right now, who are going to fall through the cracks. Undocumented workers are not eligible for any of the relief that's coming from the federal government. Many workers fall through the cracks of even this expanded unemployment insurance program. So we're seeing these unemployment numbers come out, and they're not reflecting the huge numbers of caregivers and domestic workers who lost work at the very beginning of this crisis and are completely off the radar.
What happens when these workers just can't or don't feel they can go to their job? Maybe they have to stay home. What happens to them then?
They're in the impossible situation of trying to figure out how they're going to feed their families, put food on the table, keep lights on, keep a roof over their families' heads. We just did a survey of 16,000 domestic workers around the country just to hear how they're faring. And the vast majority of people are in a food insecurity crisis right now. The majority of people don't know if they will have food next week. And more than half said that they could not pay their rent. These are just, I mean, I don't know how else to describe them. The word crisis has been used so often, and I don't think it adequately captures the devastation that so many working people are facing, especially people who already worked in low-wage service jobs before that didn't have a safety net. Everything is compounding and there's no end in sight.
In many states, the Alliance has been part of a movement campaigning for a Bill of Rights, where people should get sick pay, where people should have paid leave. Those are bills, they're not mandates. They're at the moment not, I mean, they're laws, but they're not required of the clients. How many people in your alliance do you think are covered by any of those protections, are receiving any of them? And what could be done? Where are the points of power, I guess, is my question, where we could be changing some of the reality for these workers?
Well, ironically, this crisis has really revealed how important this workforce and the work that Crystal does is, right? If ever there was a moment to see how important it is that we have caregivers and that there is a professional workforce who knows how to keep us safe and healthy in these times of crisis, and how under supported they've been, and how that creates a dangerous environment for all of us, right? And so my hope is that coming out of this moment of crisis, what we look to do is actually double down on supporting caregivers and investing in how we protect the rights of caregivers, how we support families to afford the care that they need, how we strengthen our caregiving systems as infrastructure, right? Coming out of economic crises, we always talk about the need to get people back to work and the need to invest in infrastructure. And this is a critical piece of our infrastructure that has been fraying and is incredibly fragile because we haven't invested in it as infrastructure. And this is the opportunity to do that.
Is it different in other countries?
Yes, in other countries, childcare is universally accessible. Long-term care, care for the elderly is universally accessible. There is no reason why in this country, with so much wealth and creativity, that we cannot design those systems, in fact, even better here, to really support the workforce, people like Crystal who give their lives every day to make sure that our families have the care they need.
On behalf of yourself, Crystal, and your colleagues, what are you asking right now of the American people and our governments, state, local, national? We talk a lot about our appreciation, and you hear the clapping out the windows in many cities in the evenings at 7 in New York. Appreciation's nice. What else do you need? What do you want coming out of this?
Thank you. One of the things that I definitely want people to understand is that nannies, housekeepers, caregivers, we are essential workers as well. And so we deserve, to be protected during this pandemic. That is the one thing that I'm asking is for protection for the ones that are on the front lines every day. Some of us don't have the option of staying at home with our families. And I also ask people that if you have a domestic worker that you've had to lay off during this time, check on them. Please check on them because I promise you, most likely they're not doing well right now or they're concerned about making their bills. And if you can, if it's in your budget to pay them, go ahead and pay them for the next month, just to cover them. I promise you they will be more appreciative than anything and they'll be loyal after this pandemic is over.
I know that there has been a fund set up, iGen, a coronavirus care fund, newly established. What's the nature of it at this point? Who can benefit from it? And is it up to the task, up to the need?
Well, there are 2.5 million domestic workers out there, 4.5 million direct care workers, who all of whom are on the front lines, many of whom will fall through the cracks of federal relief. So yes, we do have this coronavirus care fund, and you can contribute to it by going to our website at domesticworkers.org. And it's meant to provide emergency cash assistance to workers out there who need it, to help them pay for urgently needed supplies and food to help sustain people through this crisis. Right now, it is available to workers who are in our network, in our community, and we're widening the circle as soon as we can. We've raised, our goal was to raise $4 million, and we're definitely going to surpass that. We're very hopeful, and we've seen a huge amount of support from everyday people. More than 80,000 people have contributed to this fund. And so it is a huge showing of support and care, and we want to encourage anybody who can to continue to give because the need is so great.
How would we help it again?
You can go to our website, domesticworkers.org, to contribute.
We are nowhere near the end of this pandemic yet, and nobody knows about the course that it will take. But it is true that someday it will be over. And you've spoken to it, both of you, a little. But to draw out your best forward-looking thinking about what needs to come of this, what needs to come, Ai-jen?
We need to put into place the safety net that should have existed for all workers so that we could all be more resilient. Who knows what the future will bring? And the definition of a safety net is to provide security and resilience for working people. And we have a safety net that is full of holes, that is outdated, and that has left behind millions of workers and exacerbated this crisis that we're all feeling for millions of working families. And it disproportionately affects women and people of color and immigrants who've all fallen through the cracks in different ways. This is our moment to remake our safety net so that we can all be protected, because we are all in this together. If ever there was a moment, right, to understand how interdependent and interconnected we are, it's in the midst of a public health pandemic. And so it is revealed that our safety net has to hold all of us because of how we're all affected.
Crystal?
Yeah, so just like Ai-jen said, right now more than ever, we need protection for all domestic workers like myself, and whether they're documented or undocumented. I honestly believe that we're going to come out better on the other end of this. People are going to realize that the ones that we were fighting for getting minimum wage, we need more. And so more than ever, I tell people that we need protection just to ensure that all people are protected.
There may be people watching in your situation, Crystal, this interview, for whom it is a very scary prospect, both to go to work, to not go to work, either one. How do you handle your anxieties as you go to that house, perhaps without the protection that you need, relying on those clients of yours to have done the right thing, and conscious that there are people that you are a vector for of potential disease? How do you approach that actually daily?
Honestly, there is a lot of anxiety with going to work every day. And so for me, I think, Crystal, you are in a better place than most right now. And so if you can just hang on, I have to constantly coach myself just to hang on and remind myself that you have bills to pay. You're just a party of one right now, so the risk is lower. However, with the clients being at home, I just have to make sure that we're all protected. So it's a daily struggle, honestly. But I just have to coach myself that a better day is coming, and I just have to hold on.
And Ai-jen, you're in a network of extraordinary people, mostly women of color, a lot of them undocumented. So while we are all in the same boat, we're not all in exactly the same boat. What are you learning from them about how to get through this moment?
Well, I'm learning that we in community create resilience for each other and with each other. And the women like Crystal who are connected to our movement and to each other are in a much better position to navigate this crisis because of the community that we've created. And I think that for all of us who are out there listening and watching this program, to remember that you're not alone and that you can connect to organizations and movements like ours who not only provide practical resources, like we have for all the caregivers who may be watching, we just launched a COVID-ready caregiver training program for free. And if you are feeling anxiety about how to keep yourself safe and your clients safe, that training is for you. You can learn about those kind of very practical resources through connecting with us, but it's also about emotional support and just remembering that you're not alone, that we're not only all in this together, but through our connection and the community that we create with each other, we create resilience and strength.
Has the labor movement, the sort of traditional labor movement, been there for you in these times, Ai-jen?
Yes, actually, we were on the phone this week. A number of union leaders got on the phone together to talk about what we can be doing to protect all workers in this moment, and really highlighting the stories of workers who are on the front lines, risking their lives and enduring unthinkable risk to keep us all safe. And how do we highlight that and protect those workers? We're definitely working together in constant conversation about what more we can be doing.
And does the demographics of your membership make a big difference at this moment? Are there things that you are dealing with that perhaps others aren't?
I think the fact that there's such a large concentration of immigrant workers in the domestic work industry, and the fact that we're overwhelmingly or disproportionately women of color in this industry, creates really unique challenges. Women are 2/3 of all minimum wage workers in this country before the coronavirus crisis hit, and the first to lose work, the last to get access to a safety net and healthcare. And so all of the inequities that shaped our world going into this moment of crisis have been compounded. And the isolation and the fear and the threats against immigrants have made it harder for immigrants to come forward and seek the assistance they need, even when they are putting their own lives on the line to keep us safe. So for sure, our workforce is in a devastatingly difficult position right now. And I will say the courage that the women that I work with are showing matches it.
Final topic that we haven't mentioned is the stress and strain of people being, many of us, dislocated from our new normal situation in life, anxious about money, or at home with people we don't spend all our time at home with usually. We have got horrifying stories of increased rates of domestic violence, partner violence, family violence. I'm imagining that you hear and witness a lot of it in the Domestic Workers Alliance. Crystal, if there's anything that you want to share or can share about what you're hearing from your colleagues, do, because I think this is a slightly invisible aspect of this pandemic that we're going to have to be dealing with for a long time.
Mental health is going to be an issue after this. There are some people that are isolated from their typical circle. And that's why I'm so grateful for National Domestic Workers Alliance for providing that space for us to come together at least once or twice a week so that we can get that social aspect. But as far as domestic violence, I'm sure there are some stories out there where people are isolated with their, as a victim with their intruders, and they can't seek help right now. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's some stories out there like that.
Ai-jen?
Yeah, I just want to name another resource that we created that was just launched on Wednesday. It's called Care Together. and it's an emotional support text line for caregivers out there. Really, anyone can use it, but it's basically to, if you are in a situation where you're feeling alone and need some emotional support, it's a lifeline for you to get support from your peers. There are going to be counselors who are on hand and available at all times to respond to the emotional support needs of this workforce. So care together, and you can learn more about it on our website.
So it sounds like a lot of reasons to go to the website. Thank you both for taking some time. You were talking about how we needed a care economy, I think 5 years ago, Ijen, if not before. I wish it hadn't taken a pandemic to drive this message home. And I wish so many of your members and your colleagues, Crystal, weren't having to put their lives on the line. But I thank you for the work that you're doing. It is keeping many of us safe and alive. And I think that everybody listening to your story will want to be part of the campaign to defend your lives and your rights and secure those rights for you and your workers and your members in these times and the times to come. So thank you both. I've been speaking with Ijen Poo, who's the Executive Director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Crystal Crawford from Atlanta, where she works as a nanny and as an active member of the Alliance. You can get more information at the website. You've been listening to CityWorks. CityWorks is a co-production of the School of Labor and Urban Studies at the City University of New York and of CUNY TV. For CityWorks, thanks for watching. I'm Laura Flanders.